make our way up to the very summit of Helvellyn at 950 metres above sea level.
The third highest mountain in England, Helvellyn in the Lake District, is no walk in the park. Having climbed Crib Goch in Snowdonia almost exactly 1 year before, it seemed only right to take on another of the infamous mountain ridgelines that England has to offer. This time it was an arête linking Birkhouse Moor to the summit of Helvellyn, known as much for its dangerous exposure as the infamous name by which it is called, Striding Edge. The day before our climb, we had discovered an old cinder track, and so we had a training session on it. Perhaps unwise for leg freshness, but too tempting not to run. One more night's sleep, and the day had arrived.
You find us once again driving the jog-on van through the Lake District National Park. And right now we're headed towards a place called Glenridding. And from Glenridding, we're going to take a route out that takes us up the infamous Striding Edge to the summit of the third highest mountain in England, Helvellyn. From there we'll take Swirral Edge back down, following Red Tarn Beck that moves into Glenridding Beck. We then should hopefully, if all's gone well, find ourselves back in Glenridding at the van.
With conditions looking deceptively clear, we began our hike out of Glenridding, only to be immediately put in our place by a lady strolling along at the same pace with her shopping.
So with the hiking team assembled and the map at the ready, we make our way up towards the summit of Helvellyn. Our journey begins following the stream down here, known as Myers Beck. That'll lead us up to a fell known as Birkhouse Moor, and from there we connect to the infamous Striding Edge. Having had a fairly flat stroll parallel to Myers Beck, we now peel away and the ground starts to slope upwards, looking a little more daunting than before. It's nice of them to provide some rough steps.
Crossing streams, the stony ground continued to steepen. Our merry group consisted of myself, Amy, James, Steve and Louise. For nearly all of us, it was our first time on the route, except Steve, who'd climbed this route many years ago. But more on that later.
One of the things you learn as you do more hill and mountain walking is to be able to pace yourself up the side of these big climbs, because they go on for a long time. You sort of set this steady, slightly lumbering but progressive pace where you're always making ground but holding a pace that's not going to put your heart rate through the roof. I remember back in 2016, a friend and I went up Ben Nevis, both nearly collapsed from exhaustion, purely because in excitement we just went off too quickly and paid the price for it. I think we genuinely have started early enough that we actually have missed a lot of the crowds. Famous last words when I find the top of Helvellyn. Absolutely packed, but at the moment it's been pleasantly pretty quiet.
We could hear the splashing of Myers Beck again,
which flows just down through this valley. First 2 kilometres completed in 24 minutes exactly from where we started coming out of Glenridding.
A brief stop for water before the landscape flashed a more dramatic aesthetic.
Just emerged over the edge, spectacular views await, although the higher points are shrouded in some low cloud.
An old stone wall would serve as a marker for the next section of ascent.
So we track this wall up over Birkhouse Moor, which looks a little more ominous because it is shrouded in cloud and fog up there, so visibility won't be quite so great once we get up towards the summit of that, which is around about the 700 metre mark. A momentary pause, you can see Glenridding just down through the valley at the base there, where we've walked up from. Climbed so far over 500 metres. Somehow Steve is still in his fleece. Not even bothered. I'll take it off when I get tired, Harry.
And then, something unexpected.
That's crazy! Jets. That was 3 jets total that just came through the valley. That was so loud.
As we climbed higher, the clouds seemed to creep down to meet us.
Oh, jets. The jets are coming. That is really loud. That's very loud. I did not think I'd be standing on the side of a mountain watching jets fly by. Whew. That was the last time you did Striding Edge when you climbed it in the 80s?
Yeah. So we climbed it with a guy called Dave Constantine, a friend of mine.
So you're returning for the first time in 35 years?
That's right, yeah.
I've got to say, apart from the weather, I'm pleasantly surprised at how quiet it is. Everything I've been reading about it being one of the busiest routes in the Lake District, I really just thought we'd be almost in a camel train of people heading up here, but nobody.
Now deeply enveloped in fog, I checked the map.
So we began here in Glenridding, and then what we did, we followed Myers Beck up this path. We swung around to the right, ascending up to 700 metres, which is where we are now, and we're about to get towards the cairn, and then we'll make our way along, crossover, and join what begins Striding Edge. I'm absolutely sweltering here. I've got sweat pouring down my back. Meanwhile, Steve's put on yet another layer. He can't get out of breath enough to actually get hot. I feel like my body temperature's all wrong. I'm boiling, and you guys are all adding layers.
Keeping the wall to our left, the scenery looked oddly surreal.
Sort of like being on a film set following this wall. We need to look for some form of gap in the wall, actually label on the map as hole in the wall. I must admit I was relying a little bit on being able to use the view to see where Swirral Edge is, where Striding Edge is, where the summit of Helvellyn is. The cloud has taken that ability away from us. 4 kilometres done, keeping the fueling going. Quick banana break. Well, it's not really a break, we're carrying on walking. Oh, steps in the wall, Gam. Does it look like a hole in the wall? No.
With the strength of wind increasing, we passed over the old stones.
So we think that this is hole in the wall.
Steps of grass led us to another stile, which no sooner had we passed than
the wind has started to pick up. Low visibility, high winds, exactly the conditions you want for Striding Edge. So on a clearer day, we might be able to see Helvellyn and the loop that we're headed for.
Fortunately, one of our party, James, had bought a new selfie stick, so we'd be okay. But still, as we climbed, there was barely a soul in sight.
It's also the summer holidays in England right now, so this is reason for it to be even more busy than usual. Maybe the jets scared everyone off. We crested by the hole in the wall, and all of a sudden Let's Fly a Kite starts playing in your head. One optimistic view of this wind is that perhaps it means over the next few hours these cloudy conditions might change.
Advance warning, they did not.
Still glorious to be up here. Wouldn't do it if we didn't want to be here. One of the other ways, apart from just the fact that you can't really see too far, you know that you're in low-hanging cloud. The outside of the map collects moisture, so you get this sort of slightly slippery surface. So I'm clutching it even more tightly than I would in just the high winds. 1 hour and 43 minutes in, we continue.
As conditions worsened, another layer went on.
Water droplets collecting in eyebrows and hair. It seems like a good time to put the raincoat on, just to give a little bit of protection against the wet weather. Classic example here of what was a clear path, all of a sudden covered in rocks, and you have to start to find your way up over that ridgeline.
A short scramble soon led to path again, with a swift reminder of the height we had now gained.
It's just the first signs of where it drops away down into the mist below, and we think we've arrived at the entrance to Hell's Gate. Base of where we begin at Striding Edge. We have to pick our way carefully, turn that safety precaution dial just up another notch. Okay guys, let's do it!
Hands came into the climb as the terrain demanded clambering both up and down.
Marvellous, good, good, good. Okay, after quite a tricky bit, we're on to a slightly more obvious path. The path just following down here to the side of the crest of the arête. And the path leads down up into another section of cloud as we track the ridge line, with me wiping my glasses every 2 minutes. Dramatic. Shame we can't see anything. I mean, look at it. It's just grass, grass, grass. Oh, it's like in video games. When the computer hasn't yet generated an image of what's below the character, you must explore, you must be venturesome to unveil more of the map.
To gain a better perspective, I climbed up to the highest point of the ridge.
Wow, look at that. You can see where it drops away both sides. It's glorious.
Then James lost his balance.
Careful. And that was the moment James got blown away. We're going to stick to the right-hand side of the ridge. People do like to walk right on the top of the ridge, or the crest as it's known. You get the absolute best view, of course, and it's the most dramatic way to approach it. But for a first-time group, in these conditions,
there was no need for us to take unnecessary risk. We continued to pick our way along the narrow path.
It's funny just watching you just sort of disappear away into the mist, James. Oh yeah. That is one hardy sheep down there. Hi guys, how you doing? Hiking Striding Edge in these conditions means that you get this element of mystery about what's coming up next, especially when you haven't hiked it before. And what you get is rocks just sort of looming out of the mist up before you. And you go, oh, all right, we're going up there next. Whereas I imagine on a clearer day, you get a bit of notice or advance warning of what you're about to ascend next. There are these moments where you have to sort of create the path yourself because there's nothing specifically laid out. Look at this. Oh, amazing. This is great, guys. Just little snippets of path that appear between the craggy rocks, the rest of it dropping away.
As we hit the trickiest section so far, rock that fell away into the mist. And so a slow and careful descent began when finally we met another group. As they were picking their way down, I climbed up to see what the best route to take would be.
You can sort of down climb that section there. One could down climb that section there, or go where those people are there. I think I'm going to head for that middle one, and then that path will lead us up that way into nothingness.
And so we clambered down a section known as the Chimney.
This is a lot better than it looks.
Okay.
You just have to have some confidence and some flexibility.
Bit by bit, the group descended.
That way, so your left leg's on swing round. Now twist and face in. Now
Well done, Amy. Perfect.
We were down safely.
With 4 miles covered and that down climb on the Chimney section done, we are storming ahead.
A man got in conversation with me about his walk along the crest. James asked me about the differences between Striding Edge and Crib Goch.
I'd say Crib Goch is like 30 to 40% more extreme than this in places. I don't know if that's even an accurate statement. The big difference appears to be that Striding Edge is a little more forgiving in the slightly easier options it offers. Crib Goch forces you a lot more to walk, if not on it, right at the top of the ridge. Whereas here you can kind of go shoulders and side to side of it.
And then, before we knew it, we could see the top of Helvellyn. At this point, Louise was so cold I'd given her my coat.
Just sort of a strange hunchback now wearing my coat. It's the moisture in the air up here. We really are in the clouds. But the beauty is Striding Edge is finished. We make our way up to the very summit of Helvellyn at 950 metres above sea level.
Half blind, the glasses came off, and finally we saw some of those who had also braved the conditions that day to be at the top of the 3rd highest mountain in England.
Beautiful spot for lunch. As you can see, it's a fairly wide open summit on the top of Helvellyn, which is a reason why in 1926 2 pilots landed a plane on this summit. It's claimed to be the first landing of a plane on a British mountain ever in history. After a couple of failed attempts due to the fog, they made a successful landing, spent around about 20 minutes, it's believed, up here, and then took off again.
We summited, but knew that there was little time to stop. We needed to find the route down Swirral Edge to better weather.
Having approached via Striding Edge, we now will make our descent down Swirral Edge, flanking the right shoulder of Catstye Cam, and then following the Beck back into Glenridding.
But there was a problem. We weren't certain where the entrance to Swirral Edge was. But then, a gap in the mist, and we saw it.
There's the start of Swirral Edge here. It's steep, jagged and rocky. It's windy, it's wet, we're battered, but we're loving it. Just a momentary window of shelter. The glasses have been abandoned because I absolutely could not see anything. It was like trying to drive a car in a rainstorm without the windscreen wipers working. Look at this, guys.
Swirral Edge was quickly proving to be a difficult route under the conditions that we were faced with.
Swirral Edge does appear to be quite different to Striding Edge in that it does force you to stay a little bit like Crib Goch near the top of the arête. And one of the downsides of that on a day like today is that you end up being rather exposed to the elements. It feels like we're walking through a rainstorm even though it's not raining. I think one of the clear examples of that we've not had great conditions is that the body of water that we've been skirting around, Red Tarn, we haven't even had a glimpse of it. We've not seen any of it at all. We have been reduced to cloud scramblers. Ends when we get to the bottom.
Clinging to wet rock, our group progressively made its way, believing that as long as we kept going, we'd make it down to clearer skies.
I think the Striding Edge is more tricky than this, but I don't know, what do you think?
One bit of the Striding Edge which was particularly difficult, where we had to turn around,
Yeah.
cling to the rock.
But you look like you've aged about 20 years climbing this.
I have aged 20 years climbing.
Well, sleep well tonight, Steve.
Ash, I will. I'll make up for last night.
Yeah, you're doing this off 2 hours sleep. That's mental. Yeah, it is a bit better. It's a little more sheltered and we're on an actual path for a bit.
Not that the path didn't plummet off to one side.
This is heavenly compared to what we were on, Louise. Your legs are what?
Appreciating it.
Your legs are appreciating it. I'm not surprised. Cheers, thanks very much.
No problem. Time for a rest.
Yeah, it's an interesting route, Dad.
It was at this moment that we somehow managed to divide. Steve felt that he had seen a good route, whilst we continued along the rocky face. This resulted in Steve getting worryingly lower and lower, for all we knew, heading towards a cliff. And then, dusting himself off, Steve felt this was probably a sign that he should come back up and join us.
The 3-coat maverick Steve Morgan. He picks his own routes.
I make my own path.
Yeah.
A final pull, and he was back.
Hello, all right? Hi. Yes, we're a little bit draggled too.
Conditions were improving.
I think we have hit that point where the glasses can finally come back out and I can see where we're going. Okay, we got it. Big rock. So as we hit the 9-kilometre mark, it only seems appropriate to celebrate with a little bit of the classic Kendal mint cake. This is the chocolate covered version. Would anyone like a piece of Kendal mint cake? Tradition says that Kendal mint cake is a great source of energy. Personally, I don't really believe it though.
I would say let's stop for a nice lunch spot, but it's so grim.
You really notice when you get on some hard-packed mud and grass, because all of a sudden it feels sort of trampoline-like compared to the jagged rocks you're walking on the ridge lines. We're going to bounce our way down the rest of the mountain now. I think I speak for the group when I say that this is relief. Steve, you pleased to be back down on solid ground?
I'm delighted.
The time has passed a little quicker than expected. Striding Edge did live up to the tales. It is definitely a dangerous ascent, but one that could be handled by anyone with a reasonable level of fitness and a head for heights. The weird thing about our situation is you couldn't really see how high you were. So for some people that might be worse, just drops away into mist, or it might be better because there's no sense of perspective. Then Helvellyn was a very open summit, if somewhat barren, and that led us, of course, to the descent down Swirral Edge, which really had its moments, but overall wasn't too crazy.
A man passed us with a hint at a possible future clothing item.
The Jog On mountain raincoat coming soon. If you want to get a jog on top, you can always go to thisisjogon.com. Order there. Hello.
The lower we got, the more the air cleared and the surrounding landscape came into focus. We paused for lunch with the sound of cold mountain water flowing downhill beside us.
Behind me here is the Beck. It starts as Red Tarn Beck, flowing out of Red Tarn itself, the large body of water which we skirted around and could never see, and then it becomes Glenridding Beck, and we're going to follow that Beck all the way back into Glenridding itself, back to the Jog On van, and hopefully a cup of tea. And as we descend a few more 100 metres, finally the views are appearing again as we get down into the valley with the Beck running down through the centre of it. We can actually see further than 20 metres in front of us. This is quite lovely. Not only does this give us now spectacular views, but also we can see the winding of the path down over the bridge, over the Beck and through the valley. Let's go!
In our excitement, James and I broke into a jog, passing mushrooms and grass before approaching and crossing one of the route's bridges.
We've currently been hiking for 4 hours and 28 minutes. The remnants of some sort of building over there. I'm not sure what. Just past 11.11 kilometres. Hello.
I then noticed something worth investigating.
Peeling away from the path, check out this section down here, because it looked even from the path pretty spectacular. Look at this. Wow. So it's like a sort of a secret pool down here with the Beck babbling down and then a small waterfall down here pouring down into this almost secret pool. Just imagine some people sort of peacefully swimming down there. Hopefully not actually going much further than the weir. There have been some tragic stories in the past. It's a beautiful little spot here. You can see the way behind me that rocks and water over time have worked together to carve away little round sections in the rock. It's quite an amazing spot really. This Beck is turning out to be a lot more attractive than I'd expected. Look at the resiliency of these trees just growing out the side of the rock, out of the cracks down here. Imagine growing as a tree. It's like, you sure you want to grow there? This is fine, I'll go here. Now we get to the serious stuff, guys. Forget Striding Edge. This is what we've been waiting for.
The Red Tarn Edge.
Absolute torrent of a waterfall coming down here. I think people living in England and frequenting the English landscape can often be forgiven for forgetting that there are such things as pretty decent sized mountains here as well. We think of it as a lot of rolling hills and valleys, and it is. But then there's areas like this and you go, oh yeah, no, that's a proper big one, that's a mountain.
The first signs of a road and civilization were emerging as the surrounding slopes sported lush fields of ferns, their scent hanging in the air around us.
It's nice to actually see some greenery. Think of how barren the top of Helvellyn was, particularly in those conditions. And this is sort of jungle-esque in comparison.
Approaching this next section marked a significant point on the map.
Finally, back at the gate where previously we turned left up towards Helvellyn, and we came back in just now on this path. The day began with the lady with her shopping, and it ends with a peaceful stroll back into Glenridding.
Being ahead of schedule allowed enough time for a rope swing prior to strolling full of life into Glenridding once again. I was sidetracked only by a front garden that needed a touch of work, and we could hear a child crying nearby.
I know the feeling.
Amy's crying inside.
15 hours, 13 minutes, and 4 seconds after setting off, we were back.
Okay?
Well done, yeah, you all right?
Hugs and congratulations were exchanged. The route up to the summit of Helvellyn via Striding Edge had proven to be a worthwhile challenge. We had climbed into the clouds and back again. resulting in a grand adventure with a great group of venturesome people.
If you're feeling fit and up to it, and you do it with a sense of caution, I'd highly recommend this as a route to you watching, and we're heading back now for a cup of tea.
I'm Harry Morgan.
Hike up a mountain sometime.
And this is Jog On.
So with the hiking group assembled, we make our way. That just fell out. Brilliant. First outtake done. It's been... Come on, you keep it on, Steve.